My name is Jacob Crowe, and welcome to the Crow's Perch. From here atop my perch, we delve into the latest of RPG stories. For I am not a harbinger of death or omen, but a harbinger of something far worse. Cringe. Today's story is about a DM who requires hours of work to be put into every player character, but he himself goes out of his way to kill multiple player characters every session. So take wing, my feathered friends, and let's gather up a murder and get right into this RPG horror story. I've always had a lot of friend groups to choose from to play D&D with. Since so many of my friends were met via D&D club in college, I bounce between groups focusing on playing in just one at a time, and as such I'm eager to try playing with different people to really experience other players and playstyles. Recently, an amazing year-and-a-half-long campaign with my last group ended, and one of my friends in that group, knowing I'd want to try playing with some new people, suggested that I join his friends soon to begin another campaign. He said this DM was a forever DM by choice, because he loved to write and finds a lot of enjoyment in story crafting. A couple other members in the same current group backed up this claim, and said they played under him before, and he put tons of work into making expansive homebrew worlds. Intrigued, I agreed to join in on this game, should the DM have me. My friends gave me his Discord info, and I messaged him asking to join. He responded pretty quickly, and was very kind. He told me about how he liked to make his homebrew worlds feel interactive, and try to work with player backstories to shape the world. He requested I make a character and let him know what I came up with, so he could see if he could work the story around some of my background by tweaking some lore or adding extra NPCs with knowledge of me. This sounded really cool, and I was all for it. He also said this campaign would begin around level 6, so I could add in a reason my character had that level of experience and give him some reputation as a result to make the backstory richer. I spent the free time I had over the next couple of days coming up with a fighter who was a rugged mercenary for hire, known around the area as a cold and gruff killer who got the job done. I talked with the DM who worked with me to establish my reputation in the starting area, and suggested a scenario where I join the party after the rest of the group meets up to join together, and an NPC suggests, "Your work sounds dangerous. You want to find Scruff McGruff the Witcher wannabe to aid you," to help make my inclusion feel more natural. He even worked with me to try and outline a rough idea of where I wanted to take my character, so he could include story elements to play off of for my development. In return for this, he asked I write up a small essay about my character to discuss his backstory, goals, plans, ambitions, how he'd react to different things, etc. He wanted tons of minor details, like my siblings' names, fond childhood memories, the works. This was pretty cool to me, and I really looked forward to playing such a fleshed out character through the duration of the campaign. Session 1 comes, and the adventures begin. Everybody meets up and Scruff joins in after a down payment, and a promise of a sizable cut along the way. We get through Session 1 without much issue. We have a traditional bandit encounter to work together in a combat scenario, and have the players work together in combat for the first time in a low-risk scenario. Standard stuff. After Session 1 ends, I talk with the other players to get to know their characters better. They've played with the DM before, and they say he does this work with backstories each campaign, and is pretty generous about not letting characters with so much work and effort put into them die easily, usually giving second chances at great costs. See long side quest to revive those who do die. Session 2 comes, and we essentially end up hunting down a scout of some raider group that's terrorizing the village we ended up in. The group has a lot of interest in resolving the raider problem, as they stole documents with directions to the next goal. So we want to figure out where the raider home base is, and get in there. We end up following the scout, and end up in an ambush. It's not a true big ambush. Rather, it's one of the raider captains with a small party out and about, and the scout traveled right to them for aid, knowing we were following him. Combat begins, and after some neat moral choices and problem solving, regarding some hostages they had with them, it comes down to the captain and the party fighting 5 versus 1. He's clearly a boss battle. After showing off his abilities, and the DM has purposefully kept him rather uninvolved in the fight up to this point. I assumed this was to make it more fair for fighting the boss, but as it was revealed, it was actually to hide the boss's abilities. Boss fight begins, and the boss turns out to be part spellcaster on top of having a long-reach weapon with multi-attack. Being the fighter I am, I was front and center initially, and I took his insane combo of god knows how many d8 in damage on melee, and the DM made multi-attack more into any 2 attacks. So I got hit by a follow-up ice spell for another insane amount of damage. I think like 4 to 5 d8s were rolled for that spell, I'm pretty sure. At this point, I'm a 6th level fighter reduced from nearly full to 2 hit points in a single turn. Naturally, I take my turn to disengage and get 15 feet away behind our barbarian and our ranger, meat shield so I can recover. You'd think this would take me out of focus of the boss, right? Having 2 combatants in between me and him? Well, no. On the boss's next turn, he made a ranged spell attack against me, completely ignoring the other characters, which of course made me unconscious. His second attack that turn was another ranged attack, on the unconscious fighter behind other active combatants. Next turn, what do you know? He goes out of his way to round my teammates and hit me with a melee attack, killing me instantly due to melee critting on unconscious targets automatically, and filling out my death saves. At this point, I kind of just went silent, and contemplated if the DM was targeting me because he didn't like me or something, and I figured I'd wait to say my piece after combat. During the course of combat, our ranger, a long-standing player of the DM's group, also died in a similar excessive focus fire action. Combat ended after that, and the party just kind of stood over our bodies. We had a player with Revivify, but being starting adventurers at level 6 in the middle of the woods, we had no diamonds. Confused, the party just kind of mulled there, waiting for the DM to say some NPC walks up to help or something. But nothing. They haul our bodies back to town, and start asking around for an advanced healer. Maybe this is a plot point, to get us to interact with some powerful healer or mage? Nope, nothing. The session awkwardly ends with us being buried, and after some silence, the DM says to me and the former ranger, make sure you guys message me tomorrow to start planning a new characters, and leaves the call after some immediate small talk to go to bed. Confused, I ask the group about it, and they say that's the fastest they've ever seen a character die in DM's game before. I messaged the DM the next day, kind of just going along with making a new character. I was disappointed, but I really wanted to keep trying with this group. I suggest my next character just be a wizard who was out adventuring. The DM got upset and said, "That's a really simple archetype and goal. You should try adding more to it." After more talking, he basically told me that just having a regular wizard was boring, and that we should plan around having a crazy backstory about how maybe I did some great magical sin, like cursing someone, or seeing visions of a great calamity that I'd felt I had to prevent. I was kind of put off putting a lot of work into another character after my last bout of backstory effort, ended 2 sessions in, after extreme combat tunnel vision from the boss. I tried to push back, saying I just wanted to be simple, or that we can just give my wizard magical amnesia, and DM can reveal my backstory, so I share the same revelation moments as my character, but the DM got frustrated and told me I had to write a good backstory to fit into the world. He left me with, "I need your 3-page character bio by game time on Saturday, or you won't be playing next session." 3 pages? Give me 3 sentences. Real talk, if you can't describe your character in 3 sentences, then you wrote way too much flocking backstory. Give me tags. Was he a soldier? Okay. Cool. Use your background to ask me if you could make a check to decipher whether or not this faction of soldiers would be moving through this area and what kind of tactics they'd have. And then we can just fill in the gaps of how you knew that information together. I want to run a game, not read your essays. Okay, rant over. We can go back to the story now. I was really taken aback by this, but again, I tried to press on. I built my wizard to be a utility caster to aid in getting out of dangerous situations with divination, purely for fudging enemy rolls. I wrote a backstory about going on a magical pilgrimage, searching for fell magic that stole my family, to which the DM approved. Next session comes, and my wizard and the other new character, a monk, get introduced. The details aren't critical here, but we got led to another combat encounter in much the same vein as last time. This time, from a shopkeeper luring us in and trapping us to be assaulted by the raiders. And in pretty much the same way as last time, the enemy's focus fire on the first player hit, barbarian this time, completely ignoring all other player combatants until the barbarian is dead. At this point, the barbarian player goes silent and doesn't speak at all. The next target was the new monk, who, you guessed it, got focused and died again. Combat ended 1 turn later, and the monk angrily said, What the flock, DM? You killed me 2 sessions in a row. They literally focused us to the point they put themselves in harm just to focus and kill us. DM, well, what do you think they're gonna do? They see you have a cleric, and they're going to make sure that you don't get healed and get backup. Monk, how would they know that? Why would they think that? I spent 6 hours making my ranger, and you make me spend like 10 hours making a monk story that fit the setting for you to kill him off in one sitting? Barbarian, yeah. It seems kinda bullshit that you have more than 1 player death per combat encounter, dude. DM, well, sorry that there's stakes and tension. You can't have a good story without actual consequences. About 30 minutes of arguing followed this, with all but 1 player berating the DM for forcing players to put in so much work to get killed in such a bullshit way. Eventually, I left the call, and surprised no session was scheduled for next week, or ever. I left the Discord group and let it be. This was only 3 weeks ago, so I'm still unsure of the full fallout. TLDR, DM wants elaborate character ideas and requires multi-page bio and backstory write-ups for all characters, but goes out of his way to kill multiple character players every session. Consequences. What are consequences? Well, the DM seemed to know what consequences were, but as to how he applied them. If there's anything I've learned from playing other games, is that even if your adventurers are doomed, just killing them is the most boring thing you can do. You know what builds just as much drama as the death of a player character? The very threat of death. In a game with an emphasis on realism, this could be diseases, bleeding, food, supplies, light even in a dungeon, their friends, hirelings, and retainers, the threat of their favorite NPCs losing their lives. Those are all things that could very much be consequences for their actions, but just killing them, especially as ham-fistedly as this DM did, that's just asking to piss someone off. He had all this information with his first character about siblings and other people that were around him, and yet it seems like the DM used none of these characters. Also, realism is not an excuse as to why your bandits are metagaming. Someone in the comments section brings up Strahd, and how Strahd is inclined to know things about the player characters before he makes his moves. The difference between how this DM ran his bandits and Strahd is that Strahd actively pursues that information. There are things he can do in-game to gather information about your party, meaning, if you found out how he did so, you could stop him. If these bandits were trailing the party, understood what the cleric was capable of, then it would make far more sense as to why they'd know to go after him first. Your PCs aren't exactly running around with signs above their heads saying what class they are. Your monsters need to behave consistently. Most people don't want to get killed unless they're aberrant, extremely prideful, or undead, or being compelled by some magical force. And an especially capricious creature would most definitely not put himself in harm's way if he knew he didn't have to. Your monsters should have goals and motivations. Make them more than just a stat block. And with that tidbit of wisdom, we end today's story. I'd like to thank you guys for getting me to 200 subscribers. I honestly didn't think I was going to break 100 when I first started this, and I've been super happy about it. So thank you guys so much. I'm considering doing something like a Discord or some other way to kind of reach out to you guys, and I'm open to suggestions in the comment section down below. And I've also opened up a Facebook page a couple months ago. I was hoping to just post memes on it or something. I'll leave the link in the description for you guys, but I will say it's pretty barren right now. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time, as the crow flies.